I love the body prayer that you indulged me in that we did together today. I love that sweeping, and I'll be careful not to knock over some of the blessings of the day, but the sweeping of our arms up to take in the whole of life, all of it, and paying attention to the blessings that are scattered at our feet and gathering up what we can, that notion of how to step into a day, how to face and position ourselves, and the embodiedness of it, that it helps us to live into it. And I love the natural flow of reciprocity that's part of it, the taking in that enables you and positions you to offer yourself then to the world, and then the gathering up again. It's that beautiful flow I think we all want to enter into when we meet each day. Sweeping up rich, heartbreaking invitations, responding to them and feeling grounded in how we step into all of it. And so hard to do. Years ago, some of you have heard this story, I think. Years ago, I took an improv training. The initial instructions were simple. Partner up and make an offering to your partner. An offer, for those of you who don't know the language of improv, is any opening salvo that invites your partner to respond, to dance with you, you might say. It can be a gesture or a phrase, something to set a scene. And then if you were the other half of the creative partnership, your job was to take the offering and then move things forward, to keep the creative energy flowing, to literally say yes in some cases, or to do so in your actions, and give your partner something they could say yes to and respond to. Yes, and then see where it takes you. Nothing, the instructor made clear before she had us begin, nothing kills improv like no. That was lesson number 1. Okay, go. I still remember what happened. Ready as I could be, kid raised in creative places, daughter of an actor. I was game. Throw me in, coach. Here we are. So when it came time for my partner to make an offer, he made a simple and literal one. He picked an apple off the snack table, and he held it out like the photo on the cover of our order of service. And he said, "Hey, you look hungry, want an apple?" "No thanks," I said. Just like that. The only rule was to say yes, and I said no, and here's the clincher: I love apples. That moment was hilarious and mortifying and so telling. In one small word, I could see how I had been conditioned, without my even realizing it, somewhere deep and automatic, to be leery of stepping into the world of invitations by saying an automatic yes. Invitation, this theme that we have for the month, it sounds so lovely, doesn't it? Saying yes sounds so lovely and, well, positive, doesn't it? It's so gracious to say yes. Such a joyful, cooperative, and spirited response. Throw open the doors to possibility. Dance with destiny, which can take you some incredible places. Yeah. Maybe? Saying yes to life's invitations is rarely simple. I think if we think about it for more than a minute and a half, we can agree on that. Even the simplest of invitations is never simple when we live into it. Take, as a very simple story, my most recent experience of saying yes. Imagine your daughter is going for her junior year semester abroad, and you and your spouse decide to go with her and set her up, since you won't be able to show up and visit once the semester is off and running. And you tell a colleague who used to live in England for decades before he moved to the United States that you're going to his former hometown of London, and he makes an invitation. Turns out this colleague has, for decades, had what's called a share in what's called a narrowboat. And he'll be heading out on the boat when you arrive. Would you like to join him for a few days? A narrowboat. For those of you who don't know, it's just what it sounds like. A narrow boat. Boats that were made to travel the canals of England, canals that were built during the Industrial Revolution until trains replaced them as the primary means for quickly transporting goods. And in and about the 1970s, people started to get the great idea of using those canals, now really defunct, and those boats for pleasure. And so that's where this invitation has its origin way back. Narrow boats now are like RVs on water. Ours had a narrow living room, narrow 2 bedrooms, narrow kitchen, narrow bathroom with shower. The boats have to be narrow enough so that 2 boats can meet on the canal and pass each other safely going in opposite directions, and short enough that they fit in the periodic locks that raise or lower the waters so the boats can go on to the next stretch of canal. So no boat is wider than 6 foot 10 inches. Ours was about 60 feet long. In many places, there is also enough room on the side of the canals that in addition to 2 lanes for passing, there's room for boats to moor, which they do for the night. Anyhow, David asked us if we wanted to join him for a few nights and a few days on the boat, because he would be there when we were in England, and we said yes. My husband seemed game. About 2 days before we showed up to meet David, Rohit and I realized that each of us thought the other was super excited about doing this. And each of us had our concerns. We knew David, we liked him a lot. We'd had some lovely occasional dinners with him and his wife, but 3 days in close quarters, it's a risk. And what would life be like on the boat? Probably not comfortable, we figured. And we imagined the canals that were built to transport goods would be sort of, well, yucky, like living on a highway. And what would we do all day? The boats went, David said, at a top speed of 3 miles an hour. So there's no, what is that called? When you have those water skiing. There's no water skiing when you're narrowboating. But we'd said yes. So after, I thought you were excited. I thought you were excited. I was trying not to be an Eeyore. I was trying not to be an Eeyore. We headed out to meet him. And life started our 3 days aboard the Mandarin, our vessel and home. Funny how often that this precursor is similar to our response to invitation and our life with invitation, right? How you say yes. Often you say yes in theory, long before that thing is required of you, long before the time comes for your future self to do what your present self promised it would do. When you don't really have skin in the game and you say yes, and when that thing is a trip to the theater with a good friend, that's generally a good thing, that present self promising the future self. But when the thing is showering in a moving narrow boat built for water conservation that regularly bumps against other boats without warning, it's a more dubious reality. But well, at that point, there we are. There we were. And what of it? Time on the boat was lovely. Sitting on the back with David while he steered and the sun set, chattering away as the world rolled slowly by was such a luxury in a hurried world, and a friendship cemented like it does with time together. And the scenery, it was largely of the countryside of Middle England, fields and really clean and well-kept sheep, and fluffy clouds and blue skies, like so many landscape paintings you've seen in museums. And each night we moored near a town with a pub where we went for dinner, which was a hoot. And learning to operate the locks was so old school and fun and active. And who gets to do that? Taking your windlass and you crank up the paddles so the water rushes in, and then you swing open the gates when the waters get even so the boat can move forward, and then you rush to catch up with your boat. And it wasn't all joy. We met with English manners, some of which are not all they're cracked up to be. We got chided in a passive-aggressive way for not leaping to help someone who was having to open and navigate a lock by herself. And then we got chastised in direct ways for helping someone else navigate a lock who hadn't asked for our help, so we got stuck either way. We got told by lovely, beautiful Jane, who instructed us on how to operate the locks our first morning, that narrowboating was a contact sport and not to sweat the bumping into each other. And then 2 days later, we got threatened with a lawsuit by a woman who chased us down after we bumped her boat. We laughed over all of it over tea in the late afternoon, and we toasted to the cows and the harvest moons each night. And a week later, I will mention, after we were gone, David's boat got stranded in the floods that hit British Midlands. All pubs closed down, nerves high, power sources weakening. We missed all of that, but only by a few days. Which is to point out all that invitations open us up to, the reality and the possibility of all of it. And so little of it is what we would expect or imagine when we say yes. I say to couples who are getting married that this yes, joyful and romantic, will change them, and not necessarily in the ways they'd hoped for or imagined. It will make them deeper and wiser, I think, and always more flexible than we imagined we could become. And maybe you'll learn French because you need to, or be forced to learn the rules of baseball because otherwise you're sitting alone on a variety of evenings, or maybe just master the mysterious ways of your mother-in-law's moods. All of it. That yes is full of sunshine and champagne and some heady and spiritual, rich and complicated waters. All of it. In fact, all heroic journeys start, don't they, with a simple yes to some invitation that the world drops at our feet. Not easy, not simple, but transformative. Look at what Gregory shared in his reflection. I didn't script it, it's really beautiful. Spirit moves in the way these things happen. How, as I read it, you say it a powerful yes and yes again to a life of authenticity and integrity, wanting your insides to match your outsides, a journey I hope we're all on. Speak your truths and not have them shut down, because they're worthwhile truths to speak that reflect your experience of the world as it is, and mine too, so I'm glad you spoke them. And love and more aliveness in your presence, and your presence here is, as you said, a result of all of those yeses that you said, not just one, but again and again and again, leaning into the yes. And as you also alluded, this wasn't a journey of champagne and sunshine, not only champagne and sunshine and Brad. Like all of us, there are other versions of that story that would tell of the turbulence. Whenever we say yes, we also have moments where we are afraid and awake in the middle of the night and scared and alone and wonder if we've let go of what was safe and good enough maybe to step into something new. When we say yes, sometimes we are like my favorite metaphor, the trapeze artist who lets go of the one rung and flies through the air, waiting for the next one to come toward them out of the darkness into the spotlight and to grab hold of it. As Gwen Burens likes to say, when one door shuts, another opens, but it can be hell in the hallway. And yes is about all of that, to a life that's more, I hope, exhilarating, faith-filled, larger, that grows us, but never simple, right? And not predictable. And saying no in some moments is as much a risk, and that we know, because stasis is death. To the trapeze artist, too, it's not a good thing not to let go. Eventually, you're stuck. So thinking back on that improv class, I have a ton of respect and compassion for the girl who refused the apple, breaking the cardinal rule, the only one her instructor had asked her to abide by. This girl was wise and worldly in retrospect, beyond her years. I mean, if you want to know what happens to someone who takes an apple when it's given to them and takes a bite, ask Adam. In the garden, he lost his gorgeous, rent-free paradise of a home. He had to wear clothes for the rest of his life and feel shame. And he had a whole mess of knowledge about the nature of good and evil dropped on him, some of which we all wish we could be spared. And yes, adventure for him opened up too. Moral adventure, life adventure for all of us. A little less protected from suffering, launched into this universe, free choice, ours, to say yes and to say no when the invitations of the universe are held out to us. Each day they are dropped at our feet, and all that this answering would cast us into. Ask us to become. In his Song of the Open Road, the poet Walt Whitman wrote of saying yes, and he named its turbulence this way: afoot and like light-hearted I take to the open road, healthy, free, the world before me, the long brown path before me leading wherever I choose. I do not offer the old smooth prizes, he writes, but offer rough, new prizes. However sweet these laid up stores, however convenient this dwelling place, we cannot remain here. However sheltered this port and calm these waters, we must not anchor here. We will sail pathless and wild seas. We sail turbulent seas of being in a life that accepts and offers invitations and keeps life in creative dialogue, no script, no choreography. So consider well, my friends, the invitations you accept. Yes is never, as we know, as simple as it appears, but neither has the journey to wisdom or deeper compassion ever been a simple one. We must live with bent knees, open to mystery. You look hungry. Would you like an apple? Shall we dance?